Hi, all of you wonderful scuba divers out there. Welcome to the Scuba Diver Magazine podcast, where I break down the latest scuba diving news and things that have piqued my interest over the previous week. This week, the body of an unnamed male scuba instructor has been recovered from a dive site in Ontario. 2 dive boat engine fires have occurred on successive recent days in southern Thailand, and Minesota has introduced a new scuba diving safety bill after the deaths of 2 divers cleaning a lake. So yes, the first news story is the body of an unnamed male scuba instructor who went missing at a shore dive site off the city of Kingston in Ontario on the afternoon of the 13th of April has been recovered, according to Frontenac, Ontario Provincial Police. The diver and his buddy had descended onto a barge wreck marked out with guidelines close to the shore where the St. Lawrence River meets Lake Ontario. They were said to have known the site well, with the victim reported to have had more than 25 years of scuba diving experience. Also, it was a warm, calm day at the wreck site, though water temperatures were only around 4 degrees Celsius, which I think classifies as warm in Ontario this time of year. Another diver acting as surface cover saw one of the pair of divers surface and shout out for someone to make an emergency call. His buddy was then seen to surface momentarily before disappearing, leaving no bubble trail. The emergency services were called at just after 3 p.m. and Kingston Fire Rescue, the police and paramedics were said to have responded rapidly. A boat was deployed to pick up the surface diver, who was reported to be in distress some 15 meters out, to be taken to hospital for treatment to minor injuries. Coast Guard vessels searched the area extensively until around 11 p.m, after which Frontenac OPP continued the operation with the police underwater search and recovery unit. They did find the diver's body the following day, and his next of kin were informed. Ontario Coroner's Office is now investigating the incident. So not a great deal of information on what happened yet. Hopefully in the next few days we'll get a bit more information, and we can try and break down what happened to prevent similar incidents going forwards. From what little information that we do have, the fact that one buddy surfaced and was immediately asking to call emergency services suggested that they were aware of something in the water. The victim surfaced and then immediately descended back down. That's not unusual. So we're getting small snippets, but yeah, hopefully in the coming days and weeks we'll get a more detailed view of events. 2 dive boat engine fires have occurred on successive recent days in southern Thailand, though all passengers and crew involved were able to be rescued. So even more liveaboard fires, which is just mind-boggling at this stage. In the most recent instance, 18 tourists and Thai passengers, as well as 8 crew members, had to be taken to a life raft in the Andaman Sea in the early hours of the 12th of April. The vessel, the 35-meter steel dive race Class E, had brought divers to the 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭 National Park and anchored for the night, ready to visit the 1980s wreck of the tin mining dredger Boon Sung and surrounding coral reef the following day. The wreck site lies some 24 kilometers off That Lamu Pier, which is just north of Phuket. At 3:30 a.m, a large amount of smoke was discovered coming from the vessel's engine room. According to the operator, the crew applied fire extinguishers to the generator they determined to be the source of the fire. There was, however, too much smoke for them to get control of the situation, and it was decided to evacuate guests and crew onto the life raft and to inform the Navy. A nearby liveaboard vessel, the Raga from Smile Dolphin Diving, came alongside and took the guests and crew on board, reportedly all uninjured. They were transferred to the local pier. In a quote from the dive race operator in a public statement, "We will do our best to assist those affected and will continue to ensure accountability." An official investigation was said to be underway. The previous day, on the 11th of April, a fire had broken out in the stern of a smaller commercial boat, the 𝐿𝐮𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐢𝐵𝐿𝐻. Its engine burst into flames. The boat had been returning from a reef snorkeling trip off Koh Kood on the other side of the country in the eastern province of Trat in the Gulf of Thailand. It was carrying a Thai family of 4, 2 children and their parents who had been staying at the Koh Kood Cabana resort. The 16-year-old helmsman sustained significant burns to his arms and face when the engine exploded close to where he had been working, but he was still said to have gone into to help get the family safely into the water before trying to put out the fire. He and 18-year-old captain eventually had to give up their attempts to contain the blaze. A passing fishing boat and emergency responders picked up the family and the crew, who were taken to a local hospital to be treated for their burns. Emergency services had been alerted at around 11:40 a.m., and officials commented that the fire appeared to have been accidental and that the boat engine met required safety standards. The boat operator thanked the rescuers for their rapid response, and the 2 crew, hailed locally as heroes for their reaction, were said to be expected to make full recoveries. The 2 latest incidents come less than a month after 26-year-old London backpacker Alexandra Clark went missing when the charter dive boat, the David John, caught fire and sank. Clark had been one of 22 tourists and crew on the vessel when the fire broke out in the morning of the 16th of March, some 10 kilometers off the coast of Koh Tao on the western side of the Gulf of Thailand. She was thought to have been in the toilet at the stern after returning from a dive at the southwest pinnacle site when the fire started at about 10 a.m. According to police, the boat's fuel tank overflowed whilst being refilled, with the vapor ignited by a spark when the engine was started up. Fire spread quickly through the engine room. As the divers and crew jumped into the sea, they were rescued by the crews of private boats alerted by an emergency call. The vessel eventually sank, and the captain and the crew member who had been filling the tank have been charged with negligence. Phuket in particular has become associated with tourist-based incidents, according to local press, leading authorities there to step up a program of random inspections in 2024. According to the Thailand Examiner, the month of April, when the country celebrates its busy New Year, their water festival regularly sees road and boat incidents increase by up to 50%. So a really bad time of year for Thailand in particular. Granted, it's the time of year, it's their New Year's, so there's a lot more activity and a lot of people visiting. But still, if that comes at the sacrifice of safety, that's really not a good thing. So hopefully, this program of random inspections can be increased to requirements of inspections, so that's just increased safety all around. While speaking about safety, on the 10th of April, the Minesota Senate passed Senate File 1346, also known as the Brady On and Joseph Anderson Safety Act. The legislation bolsters workplace safety standards for workers who use scuba gear to clear weed from lakes and holds willfully negligent companies accountable. The bill addresses gaps in state law that led to the tragic deaths of 2 young Minnesotans, whom the legislation is named after. When signed into law, the legislation will do the following. It will create a new section of state OSHA law that requires aquatic plant management companies to ensure that employees using scuba gear have specific safety equipment, require that employees have open water scuba diving certification from a nationally recognized training provider, require mandatory first aid and CPR training for employees, add worker safety requirements to the DNR's permitting process for aquatic plants management companies, ensure that companies are aware of state and federal worker safety standards, mandate a third-party hazard survey and consultation for companies seeking permits for aquatic plant removal, and require the DNR to deny permits to any company that has received a willful OSHA violation in the past 2 years, and revoke a permit if an employer is found to have bypass safety consultation requirements. The bill author, Senator Liz Bolden, released the following statement. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the parents of Brady and Joseph. These unthinkable tragedies were preventable, and I can only imagine the pain that they have felt and are still navigating. Their resilience and advocacy will save lives in our state, and Minnesota owes them a Minnesota owes a great deal to them. Yeah, so from what I remember, these guys were tasked with clearing weeds from a, I think it was like a golf lake, but I could be wrong. It was a lake, and they were sent in to collect weeds, but I don't think they were trained in any. Well, they basically gave them fundamental dive equipment and just said, yeah, just go in the water and collect some weeds. And even though it was relatively shallow, yeah, if you're not taught how to do like regulator recovery or whatever, then yeah, you're just going to get a mouthful of water and then freak out. So this bill is put into place to like really enforce employers to go, you know what, yeah, we need to train our staff. The staff need to be trained to a certain standard. I mean, this says open water. I'd prefer something a bit more like work-based, because after doing the 𝐻SE course, you suddenly see a different side of diving, where you're much more focused on, yeah, making sure all of the equipment is in good working condition, making sure everything's in the right place, you have everything, you're communicating properly, and everything's done by the book. Whereas this just kind of is like, yeah, as long as you can do your BWRAF checks, get in the water. But it's a step forwards in the right direction. It's nowhere near as strict as we have here in the UK, which you have to have all this very specific certifications, and you have to have yearly 𝐻SE medicals and all that kind of stuff to even step foot in the water if you're doing underwater work. So yeah, it's a step in the right direction. It's not all just, hey, just do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Now they're really kind of settling out as like, yeah, actually, no, you do need these requirements. Everyone needs to be qualified and trained in different aspects of working in and around the water. And granted, yes, it will be painful at the beginning for these kind of firms to install these kind of training things and safety aspects. But if it saves one life, then it's worth it. Next news story is an interesting one. It comes from the Miami Herald, and it's about a pair of researchers who are doing a combination of scuba dives and snorkeling trips last year in a survey to survey the fish in the area. They wrote a study which was published on the 8th of April in a peer-reviewed journal, The Checklist, and during their underwater expeditions, researchers noticed several long-fin batfish, which is a species that has not been previously recorded in that area. The long-fin batfish are typically found in the western Pacific Ocean. You see them in several waters around the world. In Egypt, you see them a fair amount. The longfin batfish were likely brought to the Mexico coast through the aquarium trade and later released. The first of their kind sightings raised concern about potential invasiveness of the species in the tropical eastern Pacific. Given this species' scattered presence in multiple sites across the region, continued monitoring is necessary to track its spread. The Gulf of California is between the western coast of mainland Mexico and the country Baja California Peninsula. So, kind of similar to the lionfish, where invasive species are brought in. It's not entirely sure how the first fish kind of established itself. There's lots of different from either the aquarium trade, where they pick up the fish from where they are native, they transport them, and then whatever reason they end up in the local waterways. Or something like they end up in the bilge tank of ships or platforms. The fish enter these kind of water tanks, and they get trapped in there. They get transported somewhere else, and then they purge the bilge tanks, and then the fish end up in the local waterways. And if they're not suitable for that area, they just die. However, for species evidently like these longfin batfish and the lionfish, if they can thrive in those waters because there's either no natural predators or there's an abundance of food and the conditions are right for them, then yeah, they can thrive. But unfortunately, they often displace something else. So with the lionfish, because they're like a top predator, nothing else predates them, but they eat a lot and they breed a lot as well. So they end up just decimating local species who, one, have no idea what they are, so they don't know to swim away from them, and so they eat them all, and yeah, they just outperform them for resources. So it's interesting. It's it may not be as a big news story as the lionfish invasion, but yeah, keep an eye on it around the coast of Mexico and the Americas. Have a look at longfin batfish. As far as new dive gear, I see that Apex are upping their advertising for the EVX 200, their new regulator, which it's been a weird product release. Apex hasn't had a great track history with product releases over the past couple of years. But it was something that we obviously work with, well, not work with, but we discuss and we work with Apex to release things on their schedule, and we have certain embargoes and things when we can and can't talk about stuff, and yeah, we were talking about the EVX because obviously someone found out about it and asked a question. So I wrote to Apex and just said, hey, can we start talking about this, because someone's asked me a question about it directly, mentioning the EVX 200 by name, and they said not yet, and then it was, oh yes, you can start talking about it. So I started talking about the EVX 200, and then someone else from Apex was upset with me because I was talking about it publicly, and I said, well, I was given permission, and it's like, oh, actually no, it was all right for the press, as it were, so it was all right for us to talk about it, but not dealers, and it was just very muddling. But yes, finally they're publicly announcing it, and yeah, it's a cool regulator. The Scuba Pro Hydros, I can't remember what they've called it. Or even if it is a Hydros, it's like a light version of the Hydros, which made sense because the Hydros was never a lightweight BCD. So for traveling, it felt quite heavy compared to some other like more travel BCDs. But I'm starting to see a lot more advertising about that, which is pretty cool. And the only other thing that I noticed, and it turns out is quite old news, as it were, but I just hadn't noticed it. I don't spend a lot of time on social media looking at these things. But Poseidon and the Deep Sea Locker, who are like a commercial diving brand. They I actually have a Deep Sea Locker hat, and they're working together. They're kind of sharing a distribution network, which is kind of interesting. And I'm seeing a lot more of their social media. They're spending a lot more on videos and social media, so that's kind of interesting. But I think that's about it as far as new dive gear. So moving on to some Ask Mark questions. 𝐿𝐻𝐫𝐫, in the age of digital dive logs and Bluetooth synchronization, are the paper logs still relevant? Yes and no. It's one of those things where they both have their pros and cons. The main benefit of like modern digital logbooks are they take up no space on your shelf. You can travel with them. You can search them. So it depends on which program you're using, but yeah, like Control F and find when was the last time you were diving in like this water temperature, how thick a wetsuit was I wearing, or whatever it was. It helps, and yeah, because you're getting all of the information directly from your dive computer, it's not infallible, but it's a lot more comprehensive. It just puts in all of the information that you could possibly need, and you just have to top it up with, oh yeah, this is what I was wearing, this is what I saw, those kind of things, which you would have to do with a paper logbook anyway. The only downsides are yeah, I suppose you could lose the data unwillingly if their like server crashes and you don't have a local file for it, or like compatibility if you change dive computers and your new dive computer doesn't talk to the same dive log app or whatever you were talking with your previous dive computer. Stuff like that, it can be annoying, but hey, whereas paper is just the same. You can get the same problem in which you can't get the same style of logbook because the publisher doesn't create them anymore. That can be quite annoying. However, it's always like universal. It is your logbook, but yeah, you can't like find a specific dive unless you're flicking through and you really start to narrow it down, or you file them in some particular way where yeah, you can sort of file things easily. Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever see a completely digital version, but for most divers, yeah, digital is the way forwards, because then it's all on your phone. You pair your dive computer to the app on your phone. You fill in any like additional details that you want, and then it's all there. And then you can do it to a your main desktop computer, and it's all kind of saved there. So yeah, you're starting to see fewer and fewer paper logbooks on dive boats. And yeah, it is kind of another one of those divers don't like change. If you've been logging dives on paper your entire dive career, it kind of feels wrong not to. So there's that kind of heritage, as it were. So yeah, I think eventually, yeah, we'll start to like get rid of paper logbooks. It'll probably take a while before it's gone from like the HSE world, because they love tangible paperwork. But hey, we will see. Ian Jones, 5841. I've been diving since 1996 and I'm now heading towards retirement and looking for a retirement job. How can I become a certified equipment technician so I can service regulators, etc.? It might depend on where you are. But here in the UK, I can attest to it because I've done a few servicing courses. Here in the UK, yeah, similar to all the HSC stuff that I've been talking about earlier, we're quite strict about this whole process, and it mainly comes down to the official service kits. You have to be a official dealer, so you have to be a dive center that holds that that particular brand to be able to buy service kits. So you can't just do it as Frank, who lives at 123 Fake Street. You have to be affiliated with a dive center, and then how it basically works is, say I have a staff member at the crew at the dive center. The manufacturer, so like Scuba Pro, for example, Scuba Pro will hold a servicing course once, maybe twice a year, at a certain dive center or wherever. I think the last Scuba Pro course I did was at a hotel, and yeah, they just get a whole bunch of servicing technicians that want to be technicians or doing like update courses. They come in, they have their entire like regulator range, and they have one of the Scuba Pro technicians who just basically tells you how to pull it apart, how to put it back again, how to balance it, and all that kind of stuff. If you need help, they're there to explain things. And yeah, it's like an entire day, and then you are a qualified Scuba Pro technician. Doesn't mean that you can service any brand. It means that you can only service Scuba Pro and strictly at that one particular dive center that put you on the course. So to be able to service every single brand, you have to wait for these courses. Some of them, my last Apex course that I did was online, and that was digital. So it was like it wasn't PowerPoint, but it was like a PowerPoint presentation. You'd go through the slides, and it was really good because you can it helps if you're technically minded, if you know the basics, like how torque wrenches work and all that kind of stuff, which tools to use, and of course you have all of the tools, because you can work it through it step by step, and then you can save the like servicing guideline as like a PDF or something. So that way, if you're ever servicing something in a few years' time and you've forgotten, you can just go back to it and refer to it and just follow it step by step. There was an online exam where you sort of multiple choice questions about all the different stuff, and then you're qualified. But yeah, it might be different in different countries. With the availability of service kits and all that kind of stuff. So if you just find the most popular like brand of dive equipment, like where you are, and like the best thing to do would be to contact that brand and just say, hey, I'm looking to get into servicing your dive equipment. What's the crack where I live? And yeah, best case scenario, they say, oh yeah, just do this online course, and yeah, you can start servicing them. It might be a bit more loosey-goosey in some other countries, I don't know. But yeah, here in the UK, you have to be affiliated with a particular dive centre, and then you get that certificate that says, yeah, this person is allowed to service our brand at this dive centre. There you go, and then you can order the service kits through that dive centre. But yeah, if you enjoy like tinkering with things, it's quite nice. Yeah, it's good fun if you enjoy like getting inside and pulling things apart and then reassembling them, and then swearing at them because it keeps creeping, and you can't get it to balance. Then yeah, but no, as a retirement gig, yeah, that's pretty good, because you tend to spend most of the time just in the workshop, just pulling things apart and putting them back together, after cleaning them, actually. Some regulators do need a lot of cleaning. But yeah, it's usually contact the brand, contact your local dive center, and sign up for some courses. Martink, I'm going to say, 72, how do I attach a flashing light to my twin or single cylinder so that my buddy can see or find me even in poor visibility or at night? A typical lanyard on these things always lets the light fall downwards and obscures it. Yeah, you can, a fair few divers use like the little flashy lights. So low power strobe. You don't want a full power like emergency strobe, because they're a bit much. You don't want to be diving next to someone who has a full power strobe just flashing away. But the little blinky lights are okay. Yeah, if it floats, then that's okay. I mean, I say it's okay. It is going to snag on stuff if you're not careful. So yeah, if it doesn't float and it naturally like sits down and nettles like between your twin set, then yeah, no one's going to see it unless it's like straight in line. So you have two options. You either make it float, or you like tie it onto the valve, or like a cam band or something. So tying it in place, my first mind, as always, goes to zip ties and like Ranger bands or something. Ranger bands are like thick rubber bands, basically. I'm not sure why they're called Ranger bands. I imagine they come from like the US, are they Army Rangers or whatever? But yeah, they're basically chunky rubber bands. And they come in different sizes. So yeah, I imagine just get a size that goes over the 2-inch webbing of the cam band, and that will just kind of lash it in place, or kind of put it up around the cylinder valves and just kind of tie it in a place where it can't fall down. Still use the that like string lanyard to act as a secondary, just a safety, so that if the Ranger band fails or the cable tie fails, then yeah, it's not going too far and you're not going to lose it. But yeah, you can just like zip tie it in position. Otherwise, yeah, try and make it float, so it floats above your yourself. Either with, you kind of want something that's pressure resistant. So my mind immediately goes to like cork, because I presume cork is pressure. I don't actually know, to be honest. But yeah, my first mind goes to like drilling a hole in in some cork, threading the lanyard through that, and that would just cause the flashy just to float up a bit. I don't know. Maybe it would crash at depth. I don't know much about cork. While scuba diving. Anyway, that's where my mind first goes. You do see a lot of divers with like bath toys, like rubber ducks and stuff. So squidgy rubber, but full of air, so that they float above you, and it helps divers just identify it. You often see it with some dive guides. They like it so that the guests can see and recognize them a bit better from behind. Just attach that to the lanyard, and that will help to float it up. But yeah, either make it float or make it so that it cannot dangle, and those are your best bets. But of course, you got to like worry about it entangling if you do make it float. So it's going to be more visible if it's floating. However, it's more of an entanglement issue. If you like ranger band it down in place, it limits the visibility, but it's a bit safer. But yeah, those are kind of your two options that I can think of. Lash it down or make it float. And that's it for this week, because I've been rambling for a fair amount of time. So thank you for listening, everybody. Remember to head over to our website, 𝐷iverNet.com. All links to the sources of everything that I've been talking about today are going to be down in the description under this video or podcast. Thanks again for listening, everybody. And of course, safe diving.